Hello and welcome to our live Cohesity and Microsoft launch event. I'm Ross Camp and I head up corporate communications here at Cohesity, and we are so glad that you're joining us today. Cohesity is dramatically expanding its relationship with Microsoft, and security is a key theme throughout. So for our loyal Spotlight on Security viewers, special welcome to you. This program is going to be right up your alley. But our news today doesn't just focus on security. We're also going to highlight revolutionary ways that together, Cohesity and Microsoft are going to help organizations get a lot more value and insights from their data. And I can tell you, AI is key. We've got an all-star lineup for you today. Charlie Bell, Executive Vice President, Security, Compliance, Identity, and Management at Microsoft will be joining us. So will Eric Boyd, Corporate Vice President and Lead of Microsoft's AI platform. Jürgen Willis, Vice President, Azure Optimized Workloads and Storage, is also on the program today. And you will hear extensively from our CEO and President, Sanjay Poonen. We will also have Microsoft MVPs and a variety of other visionaries joining us today. So much to cover, but before we get to the announcements, we need to share this special love letter from our legal department that states that some of the content that you will hear today includes forward-looking statements. So please beware. And with that, let's get straight to it. Our expanded relationship with Microsoft focuses on three core areas: security, AI, and cloud. And we've got exciting news to share across all of these areas today. To unpack this news and talk about why this expanded relationship with Microsoft is so critical to customers around the world, I'd like to bring in Cohesity CEO and President, Sanjay Poonen. Sanjay, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Ross. It's great to be here and talk about this exciting day in our multi-cloud journey.
Sanjay, let's dive right in and start with the topic around security. We're already doing a ton with Microsoft on the security side, and we've got a lot more planned. Can you talk about some of the things that we've announced on the security side with Microsoft?
Yeah, Ross, I think, listen, it's all driven by customers. When I got to Cohesity, I had a history of working at Microsoft. My first job was actually at Microsoft, so I know many of the executives really well. I called Charlie Bell, whom I've known from his previous gig, and I said, we're a multi-cloud company. I think the starting point is actually to work with you in security. He absolutely agreed. We'd already been doing good work with integration of multi-factor authentication, Azure AD, the product's now called Entra. He walked me through the entire portfolio, his vision for security. They built, I think, a $15-20 billion security business. And we prioritized integration with Sentinel, integration with their security services team run by Kelly Bissell, Purview, and some of the work that we're doing. There was also going to be in the roadmap in compliance and privacy. There's integrations that already exist with Big ID. It's going to be in our roadmap. Fort Knox, a cyber vault, we prioritize getting that done. You're going to see that also coming out shortly. And integration is always a journey. It's never a destination. So you're going to see stuff that we're announcing today, but we have a very, very good, rich roadmap for many things you're going to see us be doing where we will be the best integrated solution of anybody in our space.
Fantastic. And let's pivot to cloud. We've got some major developments on the cloud side, including having many of our very popular Cohesity cloud services, or our SaaS offerings, available and hosted on Azure. This is big news and offers customers greater choice in a multi-cloud world. Sanjay, can you elaborate a bit more on what we're doing in this area?
Yeah, I think, thanks to the architecture that Mohit had built years ago, this was a hybrid cloud, multi-cloud sort of architected solution, scale out. We were the first to bring that to a cloud architecture that could run multi-cloud. We really had good success with AWS. Google Ventures is also an investor in this company. So we had ideas of multi-cloud. I really accelerated getting our engineering teams to get this out so that customers who are asking us to be able to back up their data into Azure or Cyber Vault into Azure because they were Azure customers could get that benefit. But in a multi-cloud world where you're getting threat feeds from areas like Sentinel, that was also an important factor. So we have prioritized doing backup as a service now for apps like Microsoft 365 into Azure. being able to run cyber vaulting in Azure Fort Knox. You'll see that coming out also shortly. And any other place where customers want to be able to back up. We had prior experience of already running our cloud edition. Think of our core data protection platform as being cloud ready in the tenants of customers. That cloud edition already works today in Azure, and we had hundreds of customers doing that. We learned from them and have now made this something where both backup as a service running in our tenant or running in the customer's tenant with Azure could allow people to get the benefit of retiring some of their max spend. We will be on the marketplace, so Microsoft reps could retire some spend of their customers through that marketplace effort. There's a wild, kind of variety of things that we could do together. Much of this experience I've had from doing this with Microsoft and other cloud vendors at VMware. We're replicating much of that playbook here, and we're going to, do that the way where both joint customers could benefit.
Fantastic. We talked about security, we talked about cloud, but one of the areas that I find most interesting is the work that Cohesity is doing with AI and large language models, which clearly is a huge area of focus for Microsoft. The stuff we're doing, quite frankly, is differentiated, it's groundbreaking. We've got a demo that we're going to share with our viewers later in the broadcast, but Sanjay, would love to hear your take on all of this.
Yeah, for me, it's personally exciting. I did some of my research work as a computer science undergrad at Dartmouth in AI, and then sort of the whole topic kind of became dry until self-driving cars. So I've actually been not much of a data management guru. I'm a security and AI person most of my life. So when I saw the OpenAI ChatGPT demos that Satya and the team were doing a few months ago, the light bulb went on for me, not just about AI applied to security, which we were already doing. The entropy of data and threat feeds are very much behavioral analytics and AI topic. But could we apply generative AI, all of those language models, to backup data? Because we have hundreds of petabytes, approaching exabytes of data that we manage for our customers. And now if you could apply that model, the beauty of what our team had built, Mohit and the founders of this company, was a file system with index that are cached, that are hydrated regularly, elastic. So the ability to search on that was already something that differentiated us. Very few, almost nobody in the backup space allows the type of global search and scale we did. Now you bring in this generative AI kind of models into this, you're able to ask a question. For example, you might be doing a legal investigation of something that happened similar to what happened 30 years ago. You could ask the question and an essay could come back a few hours later because all that data is in the backup and we're the best at being able to unveil that. So we started to prototype that with just a few engineers, and it's been amazing what we're seeing. So we're actually breaking new ground as the first company to bring this generative AI, OpenAI capabilities to backup and data protection, which is amazing. And we're going to see a whole new innovation. The underlying architecture was sort of generative AI, conversational AI ready. We just had to bring this hammer now to apply this. And we're not asking questions about the meaning of life. This is asking questions on your data. This is customers' data. It's their data. We're just bringing a much more AI-driven search capability, if you would, to this. And I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, and that makes two of us. And I am getting the wrap warning, Sanjay, but I want to sneak in one more quick question. So you were recently in Redmond speaking with many key Microsoft executives. Can you give us an idea of who you talked to and how those conversations went?
Well, I started my career at Microsoft, and I know many of these folks. When I was at SAP, the executive actually working on the relationship from Microsoft SAP with Satya Nadella. We've been friends for many years, and I did the same as a VMware. So I did meet with Satya. He actually said, hey, listen, what you guys are working on here is called retrieval augmented generation. He's become so savvy in AI. It's codenamed RAG. That's a body of research. So we're going to go study that and work very closely with them. He's super excited about anything in AI. Charlie Bell, I've known him for years, so he's going to be key to our working with security. Scott Guthrie runs Azure, but he has a gentleman named Eric Boyd in AI that we also met. You're going to see him in the video. Jürgen Willis is also in his team, who's been a great partner. And then the go-to-market team under Judson Althoff, I've known him many years, Nick Parker and his team, and the team that's working with us there. So many facets to what we're doing in security, AI, cloud, and of course the go-to-market efforts, because we want certainly many joint customers to be able to benefit in how they're able to potentially retire Azure Max spend off the marketplace. So you're going to see this partnership flourish. It's not an exclusive partnership in any way. We want to be multi-cloud, and it's all about helping joint customers and joint partners. So if there's a joint partner, we could also do a three-way relationship of Cohesity, Microsoft, and that partner. So exciting times, and it's a good way of advancing both our innovation and our go-to-market customer obsession forward.
All right. Well, Sanjay, we were lucky enough to capture some of your conversation with Charlie Bell on video. I've seen it. It's a super fascinating interview. I'm sure many of our viewers would also like to see it. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you to you. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and roll that video.
Thank you, Ross.
Charlie, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for really getting the time to spend together. So I'd like to talk to you about all the things you're doing. So we're starting there because you've got a broad portfolio and a big vision. Maybe give us a sense of what your vision is for security, why you took this role, and what you're trying to change, in terms of the landscape of how security will play out.
I started thinking about what are the big problems in the world, and the one that hit me was the security problem. It's huge and growing, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized first of all it was going to be solved by the community. It's a community problem. When we think about the bad actors, the advantage we have is there's more of us and we have more data than they do. But we talk a lot about asymmetry of the attacker. The problem is they get to come at any point and concentrate, and they get to explore without us necessarily knowing, and then they come in and we have to react. And so I thought, wow, there's this great opportunity for kind of thinking end to end about the problem. So there's a lot of advantage in the cloud, a lot of things we can do to bring things together. We have to recognize that people are still largely on premise and they have their own stuff that they have to protect. It's a hybrid world. The other thing I observed, it's going to be a multi-cloud world. So, customers are going to make choices. They're going to choose different things. And so I thought long and hard about, if I was going to make an impact in this area, where would that likely happen? And what hit me was Microsoft, because Microsoft has a long history, first of all, of being able to lead a community. It's really exciting. There's a lot we can do to change the asymmetry of the attacker. We're in a world of AI and data is a huge part of it. We can understand what we have and do a better job of protecting it. And because we can finally apply technology to looking across everything we have and taking action through AI, I think we're going to be able to turn the corner on this thing.
That's great. Good segue to data security. And our world of data security is very much driven by the fear and concern about ransomware. There's 20 ransomware attacks or attempts every second. That's a lot. Not all of them are successful, but many organizations I talk to, CEOs, CIOs, CISOs, and even their boards and audit committees are kind of worried about a black swan event where they get attacked and they have to recover. And sometimes because it's so pervasive or they don't have a recovery plan. So this is a major threat, often nation state actors. What's your perspective on how we better fight this? Some of this we're obviously doing together on the ransomware threat.
There's a commercialization of this that we should be very worried about, and also nation states. Certain nation states use this as a revenue generator for them. So the problem is large and well organized. We see it. We see the pain with customers because we do incident response. So in addition to all of the things Microsoft does to build security into the products and provide security products, we also help customers when they have problems. And in the incident responses, over and over, we see these terribly heart-wrenching stories. A company isn't ready. They have a ransomware event, and suddenly they're facing, oh my gosh, I am shut down, and I either have to pay the ransom. I don't even know. Some of these actors aren't even honoring the payment. They get the payment and they, do something else. And extortion is part of the game. And it's just heartrending to see what they go through in this space. So there's a lot we're going to have to do, I think, as providers and for our customers. There's a lot they need to do to get ready for this.
What advice do you have to partners like us, how we can best get the breadth of your portfolio? Because it's going to take a village for us to win, right? It's not going to be just one company that's able to do all in security.
Absolutely. Customers have to have backups. This is the thing we see over and over in these incidents, is the customer, because they didn't have a place that they put their data that was separate from what the ransomware actor had access to, they have no way to recover. And when you have no way to recover, there's no guarantee that even payment will get them out of it. And so that kind of the data security and posture, being able to know your situation. Where is your data? Where is it being accessed? Can it be accessed? And understanding that you have it covered, you have it backed up. That part of the relationship Sanjay. It's so important.
Because there's an AI element that applies to you folks in security, but there's also an AI element that's never been done to second-rated by backup systems that we will be the first to do, and we couldn't be more honored to be doing this with your tech. So maybe your vision, a little bit of AI, because so much of what you're doing in security is AI related, and a good part of what you were announcing this past week. What are some of the ways in which AI will help what you're doing in security?
Well, what you just outlined, it shows the potential, like, because we can now, AI is now smart enough. It's not generally intelligent, it's not human. And by the way, that's why we call it a co-pilot. One of the key things here is it's not going to replace the humans in this thing. It's just going to make them incredibly powerful. But we can now make them powerful in the system space. It's going to be a great accelerator for business productivity, for, the tasks we do every day. But it's going to be able to extend into the system space, enable humans to deal with things they could never deal with before. There's so much complexity down there. Having dealt with cloud for a very long time, I understand like the surface area in the systems world, in data, in how you manage it, in the systems that operate on it, is so complex that having an AI trained on backups on the environment that's underneath. And the thing about AI that's fascinating, these large models, you can see across a tremendous amount of data. We generate, I think it's now 65 trillion signals a day. I don't know if you heard that stat at the launch. I mean,
Incredible.
that's a huge amount of data coming in. And historically, the ability to deal with that and to make it useful, it hasn't been there. But with AI, we get to do that. And again, that's going to change the asymmetry problem, because we have more data. They get to see the surface. We have all of it.
All right. Thank you, Sanjay and Charlie. Super insightful conversation. I was particularly struck by Charlie's comments on the need for community, an ecosystem, modern data protection and recovery, and the need for AI, or as Charlie says, a co-pilot, to solve today's security challenges. We could not agree more. So moving on in the program to our next segment, Sanjay also talked about some of the major cloud innovations that we're making, including hosting our backup as a service and our cyber vaulting as a service cloud offerings on Azure. This is a big advancement as we now offer these popular cloud services on multiple clouds while enabling a multi-cloud world for our customers where choice is key. These offerings can help customers also, of course, dramatically improve their security posture. To discuss these cloud innovations in detail, let's bring in Microsoft MVP and the leader of Cohesity's technology advocacy group, Teresa Miller. Teresa, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me today.
Great to see you. Teresa, cyber attacks are reportedly occurring every 39 seconds, with 30,000 websites hacked daily. Those numbers are just staggering. So first off, before we even dive into anything else, I would welcome your perspective on those statistics.
Yeah, it's shocking to me. I remember a time when cyber attacks and threats were something you could sit back and almost had some time to implement new products before that attack could occur. Now we don't get any time. We have to be ready in every moment to prevent an attack. So what that's doing is making ransomware and security risks business as usual. Having a plan is more important than ever. And when I think about data protection, backup, and recovery, I think back to a time when organizations used to leverage tape so that they could isolate their data. But we moved away from that because that didn't come without challenges either, because recovery SLAs weren't guaranteed, and you weren't even always sure you were going to get the correct data back in that moment. So times have changed for sure, Ross.
Yeah, and in many ways, in terms of the capabilities that we're offering, I think times are changing for the better, even as the bad guys continue to get more sophisticated. And I think to that point, Teresa, Today, we announced that Cohesity's backup as a service offering supports backing up Microsoft 365 onto the Azure data plane. And in short order, our cyber vaulting as a service offering, Fort Knox, will also be available on Azure as well. And as you well know, Fort Knox provides an air-gapped copy of data to an offsite location in the cloud. So it really supports that 3-2-1 rule. Teresa, would love your perspective on why these SaaS offerings are so critical now.
Yeah, so everything we've been talking about here today highlights the fact that cyber attack risk is more prolific than ever. And while organizations may be armed and well prepared with many security tools deployed, a lot of the time it's still not enough. That ransomware or cyber attack can still occur, and in some cases even attack the backups. So when we're looking at solutions to be able to recover, having an air-gapped and isolated copy of your data, in addition to all other backup and recovery tools and options, is more critical than ever.
I totally agree. And let's for a moment pivot, looking specifically at these air gapping capabilities via Cohesity Fort Knox. Teresa, it would be great if you could give our viewers a little bit of a sneak peek at what cyber vaulting as a service on Azure will look like.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a preview for our audience today. So real quick, just to recap, before I dive into our preview, I just want to reiterate and highlight that it's so important for enterprises to not only have the right security tools in place, but making sure you have multiple recovery options and solutions in place. It's critical. So when we talk about Cohesity Fort Knox, we are offering the ability for enterprises to keep yet another copy of their data, but it's vaulted to the cloud, and it's air-gapped, it's immutable, and we offer quorum-based capabilities that ensure that there's an approval process in place for actions to occur, such as recovery. So this is giving enterprises a secure recovery point for their data. All right, so in this preview, I'm starting out here on the Cohesity Data Cloud security dashboard. And specifically, we're going to go ahead here and look at Fort Knox. So by clicking on Fort Knox, I get the Fort Knox dashboard. I can get an overview of the data stored, the warm data, cold data, as well as an overview of what's vaulting. So the green means that vaulting is successful. Blue, vaulting is occurring, and red means vaulting is stalled, and I need to take a look. Now, beyond this, let's talk a little bit about how to set this up just in the next couple minutes here. There's 3 elements to this. The first one is the Cloud Vault. So if I want to add an Azure region, for example, the steps to that are pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create Cloud Vault. I'm going to go ahead and type in a name. I'm going to choose my Azure cloud provider, choose the central region with a cold storage class, and we're going to go ahead and do Cohesity Managed KMS. So that kicks this process off and take just a few minutes for that and provisioning to complete. But sometimes, of course, that can happen sooner. So we can see that that is already set up, and I now have my Azure Central region. So that's step 1. The other part to this is making sure that you have quorum set up. So quorum is ensuring that more than one person has to approve an action. So what we're going to do today is take a look at this one, and we're going to look at the operations. So from an operations perspective, I have this set up for recovery specifically. And from an approver's perspective, I have 3 approvers in place, but only 2 need to step in and approve for any type of restore to occur. Since that is already set up, I'm just going to cancel. And one more quick thing here on quorum. Once a request or an action has been made, the status of the approvals can be reviewed right from here. Now, the last piece to set up here is to go to Cloud Vaults and Protection. I can see jobs that are running, but beyond that, we want to focus on our policies and adding the proper vault protection for that new Azure region we just added. So you can see I clicked Add Vault Protection. I'm going to go ahead and choose SJ Marketing, click Continue. I'm using my gold policy. And beyond that, my vault protection is set to Azure Central, running every time, retaining for 6 months with data lock immutability. I have the ability to go back in and edit if I wanted to modify, but we're all set with what's in place. All right, so now, as you can see, that was just a few setup steps to take that took just a couple minutes. Now we've received word that we need to restore a machine. There was an incident and we need to go out to the vault to do recovery. So for that to occur, I'd need to head back out to my Fort Knox dashboard, and I can go ahead and initiate recovery of a VM. So we're going to go ahead and choose that SJ Marketing. And we've been told that this VM mission critical machine is the one we want to restore. We need to go ahead and make sure that we choose the restore from the vault that it occurred to. So in our case, it's the Azure Central, and we're going to go ahead and click Next. Now, in terms of options here, you do have the ability to recover to a new location, and that would allow you actually to further evaluate the machine before you put it back into production. But for today, we're going to stick with original location. So I'm going to go ahead and click Recover. And now that you can see here is that the quorum request has been submitted. And in order for this to continue with the restore, we need one of our other quorum approvers to jump in and approve. So that wraps up what I wanted to show you regarding our Fort Knox on Azure preview. Ross, I'm going to turn this back over to you.
All right. Super compelling to see this Cypher Vaulting as a service offering coming onto Azure in the very near future. Again, another key way to help organizations really adhere to and advance that 3-2-1 rule. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
All right, so moving on to our next segment, which focuses on data insights and artificial intelligence. As we all know, OpenAI is getting a ton of attention. It's all over the news. But Cohesity is breaking ground on a new use case for this that marries data security and management with OpenAI. And as we all know, AI is also a critical area of focus for Microsoft. And I will just say the possibilities here are endless. But first, while Sanjay was in Redmond, he also had the opportunity to speak with Eric Boyd, Microsoft's corporate vice president and lead for their AI platform. Their conversation really sets the stage for what's to come. So without further ado, let's roll that video.
Well, your shirt says AI platform, so I want to ask you a little bit of your vision. You've had a front row seat to see AI from being to now being transformed. What's Microsoft's vision for AI that you've now started to unveil to the world?
Yeah, I mean, so Microsoft as a company, we have this broad mission of we want to empower every person and organization on the planet to go and achieve more. The vision for AI is to use AI to go and do exactly that. So we see this explosion in capability of AI that, particularly with these large language models, but across the full spectrum, including the way vision works, including speech and how all of this fits together. And so we really are looking for the ways that companies are trying to use this to help make people more productive. And we see just so many opportunities to make people more productive. We started with Copilot for GitHub,
Yes.
And so making developers more productive. And
Incredible.
we've just seen tremendous gains in that. And now we just see so many adjacencies where lots of people now are going to be able to effectively have a conversation with an intelligent co-pilot that will help make them more productive at the work that they're doing. And so, and you can see that we've rolled that out across the spectrum of products that we have.
Well, let's go right there. But I want to start with this term that I was talking to your CEO today, Satya Nadella, and he used this term, I was describing what we're doing, he used this term RAG.
Yes.
Okay. What is RAG and how does it apply to a little bit of what we are doing?
Yeah, so this is what when we go and talk to enterprise customers, what they all say to us is, man, ChatGPT, these models are so powerful and so amazing, but I need it to be able to talk and reason about my data. And so RAG is this new term that's come out. It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And so the notion is, we have a demo set up where we say, look, let's take all of the healthcare documentation that you've got for an organization. And some of these healthcare documents, the plans and all of it, they're like hundreds of pages explaining what's covered and what's not covered. And so nobody wants to pour through that. You just want to be able to ask like, okay, does my plan cover annual vision exams? Which plan covers annual vision exams? And so what you do with this retrieval augmented generation pattern is you index all of these documents in a search engine, and then you sort of pull the relevant pieces out and sort of feed that to ChatGPT and say, hey, here are the documents I think you're going to need to know about to answer this question of, does my plan cover eye exams? And then ChatGPT can read over it and then can even cite it, and it can say, hey, yes, your plan does cover eye exams, and this is the document that covers that answer. And specifically, here's where in that document that covers that answer. And so that's the pattern that, we really pioneered with Bing. And so when you go to Bing Chat and you do a search for something, if I want to know about an event that happened yesterday and, I sort of search for those events, it will go and it'll do a search for that and then feed the results of that search query into the Bing chatbot that then can go and answer directly on top of that. So that pattern of retrieve some data, feed it into the, the prompt for the chat and then have it respond on it. We call that RAG, is super powerful for how customers are going to use this going forward.
Well, what are your thoughts of how that type of use case, which is very enterprise focused, and the problem that it solves is the ability for someone to be able to search a large backup file, which might be tens or hundreds of petabytes.
Yeah.
And the example I was using describing to people, it's like, remember that 1980s tape that we had of Michael Jackson? If you wanted to find the song, it was impossible to find it.
Right.
Because you were rewinding fast forward on tape. But now with a lot of that index infrastructure with AI, you're able to do that really fast. Do you see use cases like this being very appealing to how OpenAI could be applied to technology like ours?
That totally resonates of like, you need to sort of figure out how do we find the right data. I think that's going to be tremendously powerful. The number of use cases that, we can see that sort of have that type of pattern. We've seen companies do it for customer support use cases where, they have tremendous amount of support documentation and they want to keep their documentation up to date, and they want their customers to be able to get the latest documentation, so their support agents to know the latest changes in the product, to be able to sort of have that documentation on demand in a specific question. Hey, the customer is asking about this, how do I do it? And really get an answer back. And so if you think about, yes, all the amount of documents that companies have and all the places where they're really not tapped into, being able to have this pattern of I can search, which we've had for a while, but now not only can I search, but I can search and reason over this specific question that I'm trying to get an answer to. And instead of having to sort of pour through the search results, it literally just tells me, no, this is the answer. This is what you need to go do.
Hey, well, we want our customers to be able to be empowered on scenarios where, let's say they're doing an investigation of something and it mirrored something that happened 30 years ago, but I wasn't there at the time. It was maybe 5 managers before me,
right,
whatever have you. Being able to go, and even if it's not a, fast query that comes back in milliseconds, Snowflake or Synapse or whatever have you, I'll come back the next day for a fully formed answer that would say a little essay of what I should do to handle this situation that mirrors what happens before. Any types of scenarios, and given the fact we're offering offerings at hundreds of petabytes, exabytes worth of backup data, that gives people an enormous amount of insights for many of these legal or other scenarios.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting use case. I think there are a lot of companies that, again, it's this massive amount of data that companies have that they want to figure out how they can do something useful with. And so search has been sort of the first step. And now you can add sort of the power to have really an intelligent reasoning engine on top of this search data that we can sort of go and pull up. I think the combination is super powerful.
Well, speaking of combination, we're looking forward to this relationship where what we're going to do is be the first in our space, data protection, data security, to use open and AI technologies to unleash insights. We're going to insights on our data and then build from there. So I'm really appreciative of your teams helping us doing that. We want to be one of your leading ISVs that build on your platform. and showcase the power of this technology for this use case. And Ali, you and the rest of the team have been enormously helpful in just a few short weeks that we've been working with you. So thank you for all of it.
No, of course, sounds great. And yeah, definitely looking forward to a really productive partnership across the teams.
Thank you, Eric.
All right,
Appreciate it.
So much great stuff discussed during that interview. As Eric indicated, Microsoft is on a mission to empower every organization on the planet to achieve more and to use AI to do just that. And of course, we are also in full agreement with that statement. To drill down on what AI could mean for Cohesity and for our customers, including through future open AI integrations, let's bring in Greg Staton, Senior Director of Systems Engineering at Cohesity, to talk about Cohesity's vision for AI. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thanks a lot, Ross. Really happy to be here today.
Fantastic to see you. Greg, I understand that you've been looking at different ways that Cohesity could use AI to help customers unlock insights from their data in ways that we've never seen before. What are some of the most compelling use cases you see for customers today in the areas that we play in?
Yeah, Ross, I mean, that's a really broad question to start with, but there were a couple of areas that I found really interesting and we wanted to kind of sit and explore. The first is we wanted to extend the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning that we were already doing on the platform to help customers uncover anomalous activities that were happening on their backup data. We wanted to be able to extend this further into helping customers reduce the time to recovery. You know, machines generate a lot of log data and system data. We wanted to be able to provide interactive reports that take that data and summarize it into very crisp and clean summaries that somebody from the CISO all the way down to the practitioner can interact with in new and meaningful ways. They can not only read this, but then also have a conversation with that log data. So again, driving this reduction in time to recovery and deeper insights into system data. The other side of this is something that Eric touched on a little bit with this retrieval augmented generation. You know, Cohesity is a data protection platform, meaning that we bring an enterprise's entire data set onto a platform to protect that. I've always said that, you know, with a platform like Cohesity, we want to be able to enable users to drive operational efficiencies elsewhere in their environment with that data. And now what we can do, powered with tools like Azure OpenAI, is we can drive a conversational question and answer, or this retrieval augmented generation of the data that's sitting in their backup without having to move it somewhere else in a really secure way. And these are two areas that I kind of sat and explored with the team and have a couple of really exciting demos to show around those.
All right, and I want to get to those demos in just a moment. But first, I want to address this next question head on because there's a lot of talk about it. There are a lot of questions about the security of these generative AI models and how to introduce AI into a company's security and data initiatives while staying compliant and not raising risks. How is Cohesity's data structure and architecture designed so that we can enable customers to realize the benefits of AI without the risks?
Yeah, that's another great question, Ross. We've always taken a security-first approach when protecting our customers' data. You know, it is their data of last resort a lot of the time. And so when we're introducing these new tools to kind of help empower our end users, we don't want to make it an all or nothing or force these things onto our users. So I think first and foremost, it is up to the end user to allow or enable access to data. Not all data or logs or system information should be consumed by these models. And so the choice needs to be back on the user to be able to say, hey, these are pieces of information that we want our users to interact with in a new and meaningful way. Coupled with Cohesity's fine-grained role-based access control takes that authorization off of the model and ensuring that the user requesting the interaction actually has the authorization to interact with the data that happens to live on that platform. And so by coupling these things, you really empower the users to kind of keep control of that data, and partnering with models like Azure OpenAI, this keeps those models into private hosted tenant environments, again, keeping it outside of the model itself.
All right, great. So it sounds like we're kind of talking about the best of both worlds here. On the one side, being able to give customers new opportunities to extract really impactful insights from their data. And then on the other side, still giving them all of the controls and rigors that Cohesity is known for today. So that sounds fantastic. So while we've not productized this yet, Greg, I understand that you have a demo that shows directionally what a potential integration between Cohesity and these generative AI models could look like. Would you mind showing that for us today?
Absolutely. And I don't have just one demo. I've got two demos for you. I'm always been overachieve here. So the first one is something that I like to call our Cohesity Insight Summary Report. And this kind of talks about the first thing that I had mentioned in the two different areas. So this is taking, very dense log stream machine data from our Cohesity Security Center, and specifically around our Data Hawk services, as well as our audit log services, and summarizing that in real time to provide an executive summary of what's going on. And so this is attached to my team's live Helios account with our live lab environment. And it's synthesized this data. All of this data is generated via Azure OpenAI. And it's found that there's been a couple of objects on here, or virtual machines, that could potentially be affected by ransomware. They have a high number of affected files, which means these files have shown anomalous behavior or anomalous changes to them. And we have a pretty high confidence rating in the fact that there's anomalies in that environment. I've also asked the model to provide some recommendations on what to do and how to move forward. And so it says, hey, you should talk to the Cohesity Security Assistant chatbot to kind of assist you through this manner and to query that information. And we'll kind of get to that in a second. What I want to do is scroll down a bit further. As Teresa said earlier in the demo, the next generation malware and ransomware that's out there not only attacks the customer's primary data payloads, but they also want to attack the backup environment, because these bad actors know that if they can infect and affect the customer's ability to recover that data, it's a higher likelihood that they're going to be able to get that ransom as payment. So what I've done here is taken a live stream of the Cohesity audit logs and summarize them through the integration with Azure OpenAI to provide me a detailed, crisp summary of what's been happening from an access patterns on the cluster itself. And so we know here that this particular user has been the heaviest user of the system most recently. I've again also asked the model to provide me some anomalous behavior that it doesn't seem to fit patterns in the audit log stream. And here it's found that there's about a dozen or so entries where people have been editing quorum application rules. As we saw from what Teresa was doing with quorum before, that could be something I'd really want to investigate as an admin. And so what I've shown here is how a practitioner can interact with this, as well as somebody like a CISO. So let's dive into what the Security Assistant chatbot is all about. So this allows me to drive a conversational question and answer against that live log data. So we'll ask it a quick question here. Can you tell me more about DHWinSim01? Now, this is one of those objects that had a pretty high affected file counts and a pretty high anomaly strength. And so what's happening is the model, the application is going out to the Cohesity, pulling a lot of that metadata that we grab about the objects that we're protecting, summarizing that in a way that I can understand as a human. And so it comes back and saying that this object is actually part of a test harness that my team has set up to test out Data Hawk, which I knew. And there's a couple of objects that fit that naming scheme, but there's one right here called Aura West, which doesn't fit that naming scheme. Now, let me ask the model to see if it could tell me more about that. So this gets really interesting if I'm sitting there trying to answer questions of my boss who's rattling off questions in, we could be potentially in a ransomware event, asking me, real questions in real time and me having to find answers to those in real time. What I can do is ask that log data and metadata to tell me more. And because this object is being backed up by Cohesity, it knows that it's running an Oracle database. It knows that it's got an ERP system running on there. Because it's being backed up by Cohesity, we index all of the backup that comes in. It knows that there's 328 Word documents, 254 Microsoft Excel workbooks. Because it's integrated with Datahawk, it knows that it's a confidential system. It's running on VMware, and it knows that there's currently a security event happening. It's providing me a recommendation on what to do to recover that. And so through a quick glance at a dashboard or a report and being able to ask two very quick questions, I know exactly what's going on in the environment. So what I'm going to do is get the second demo here prepped, which really focuses on what they were calling this retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, where I can drive conversational question and answer from the data that's living on the platform. And so while this gets stood up, what I am going to do is kind of set a story for you. Let's imagine that I happen to be a new lawyer that had joined a law firm. And this law firm happens to have been around for 20, 30 years. And I'm litigating this case that happens to deal with construction companies and subcontractors on particular contract negotiations. And one of the partners told me that, hey, you know what? This actually happens to remind me of a case that we had litigated 15 years ago. I don't remember too much about it. Go dig through the archives. And so in the old days, what you'd have to go do is go to the closet, go pull out boxes full of paper and read through all of that to be able to get an idea of what happened. Or you have to call up a company like Iron Mountain, request a truckload of tapes to come back, all of that data to get restored, and again, have to read it. But this company was smart. They decided to go with Cohesity from a data protection perspective and to store their archived case notes on there. So now with the power of Azure OpenAI and data that lives on Cohesity, I can ask real world questions of that data to gain additional insights. And so I'm going to ask this question, can you list cases that are involving subcontractors and construction companies? And again, what's happening here is it's going out to that data that's living on a Cohesity view, which is an exposed file system, and it's summarizing the data for me. It said, oh, there's actually a couple of cases here. And I remember from that conversation with the partner that it happened to do with somebody named Kemp. And so I can go through and say, hey, can you summarize this Kemp v. Bechtel Construction Company case for me? And again, it's going back out to that data, grabbing relevant sections of the text itself, providing me a summary. And we also have the ability to provide metadata about those searches. And so I have the citations, which files those came from this particular view called Case Archive 1. And I also provided the relevant sections of those documents along with the document itself, so that now I, as the end user, can go in and read deeper into those files to gain additional insights. So I've now reduced my research time significantly by just leveraging the data that exists on the platform to drive operational efficiencies.
All right, Greg, we have heard about the potential power of AI for so long, but it's really fascinating to see these types of use cases that could be on the horizon in the very near future, differentiated opportunities for customers via Cohesity and what we're doing with Azure OpenAI. Thank you so much for providing the demos and also for joining the program today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time.
All right. So that takes us to our final segment in today's launch broadcast. As Cohesity continues to embrace that multi-cloud world that we discussed earlier, which of course ties directly into our extended relationship with Microsoft, we wanted to probe a bit further on how cloud-hosted workloads are changing the landscape for data security and management. Amit Nair, SVP and GM of Cohesity's cloud business, had the chance to probe that further with Jürgen Willis, Microsoft's Vice President of Azure Optimized Workloads and Storage. Let's roll that video.
How have cloud-hosted workloads changed the landscape for securing your data and managing them?
Yeah, I think I think customers are really looking for, as they move to the cloud, and are looking for maybe opportunities to sort of, I'll say modernize in terms of how they do these things, and how they better protect their assets, while at the same time, giving access to more remote workers and so on. And how do they sort of do this at the same time? Customers are looking for very integrated solutions. They want to, be hosting their data in the cloud, running their applications in the cloud, and they're looking for very integrated solutions from an end-to-end management standpoint, from a security standpoint, from a compliance and sort of adherence to regulations, and data sovereignty and operational sovereignty, and essentially looking for integrated solutions that really help them achieve this way and sort of fall into that kind of pit of success from a protection standpoint.
Yeah, these are things that we are very excited to work with Microsoft on. The announcements we have with Microsoft Sentinel, the integration that we are doing from a data security standpoint. I think that integrated solution, as you mentioned, will definitely help our joint customers a lot. What are some of the growing trends that customers should be aware of, especially as it relates to data security and management?
Yeah, I think, again, thinking about how do we get to more integrated solutions, thinking about defense in depth, I think, things like, the Sentinel integration, for example, right? And how do you sort of correlate all of the different signals that you have in this notion of more proactive threat detection, but utilize all of the information you can kind of bring to bear to identify these threats, to try and mitigate these threats as quickly as possible, thinking again back to sort of zero trust principles, sort of assume that there is a breach at any given point in time. How do you detect where that is? How do you sort of shut down that, and how do you sort of mitigate that? And then, thinking about things like how are you going to recover from that? Do you have immutable copies of your backups and so on that are going to provide you a very fast recovery path for your data, but more importantly for your business?
Yep, absolutely. I think for us, the recovery and resiliency part of the storage and data is extremely important. It's something that customers talk to us about all the time. And that fast recovery, like you said, is extremely critical as well. To be able to categorize and classify the data and then being able to recover the one, that's extremely important. I think that's critical. Any other things that you would talk to from a customer perspective, things that they should keep in mind, especially when it comes to data storage in the cloud?
Yeah, I think, really just thinking deeply about these, being proactive about this, thinking about, what is sort of your data protection strategies, thinking about how you test those things, how you test things like failovers, how you test things like restore, and assume things will always only work when you need them if you test them. And so basically that there's both a proactive work in terms of what is sort of the defense in depth, but also making sure that organizations are really sort of testing these capabilities to make sure that, they're there, in sort of the event that a bad actor ever does get into the network, and really just being very thoughtful about sort of the plan, but exercising those as well.
I mean, I'm usually a glass half full person, but when it comes to security, you always have to assume the worst, right?
Yeah.
I know it's overused, but it's true for security.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jürgen. This is extremely valuable. I really appreciate the time you've taken to spend with us answering these questions. I'm sure our customers will definitely appreciate the insights that you provided. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great insights shared by Jürgen. Thank you, Jürgen and Amit. Wherever your data is backed up and stored, including in the cloud, it's critical that companies think about their data protection strategy and test that strategy so that if and when recovery is necessary, you're covered. And speaking of coverage, we've covered a lot of territory today. 3 big takeaways from today's launch. Number 1, Cohesity is collaborating with Microsoft in 3 big areas of focus: security, AI, and cloud. Number 2, Cohesity's popular cloud services, including our backup as a service offering and our cyber vaulting as a service offering, are extended to and being hosted on Azure, meeting customers where they want to be met in a multi-cloud world. And last but not least, number 3, Cohesity and Microsoft share a vision for AI that is really around empowering people and organizations to achieve more, including in areas like data security. The sky is the limit in terms of the opportunities to help customers get more valuable insights from their data. This brings us to the end of our launch event. You will be getting a survey. Please tell us what you think of today's broadcast. And for our loyal Spotlight on Security viewers, keep an eye out for our next Spotlight on Security episode. It's going to be a great one. Until then, stay safe and secure, and thank you for joining us today.